There was a time when legitimate news was made at national political conventions. That began to change with the scripted 1972 Republican National Convention, a coronation for President Richard Nixon. The 1996 GOP convention can best be described as put on a happy face. Legitimate disagreements, particularly on abortion, were smoothed over, making for a week of supposed unanimity. This program shall take a chronological perspective at convention coverage. Was it a realistic portrayal or an infomercial? Traditional and non-traditional media shall be examined, including GOP TV, produced by the party itself.
With patriotism, fanfare, and a moving tribute to Ronald Reagan, the GOP convention kicks off in style.
He said, never, never lose your natural, God-given optimism.
Minorities, they've been taken for granted by Democrats and overlooked by Republicans. Now, GOP leaders like Jack Kemp and Colin Powell want to bridge that gap to strengthen their party. With news analysis, commentary by Pat Robertson, and reports from around the world, this is News Watch Today.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to News Watch Today. I'm Pat Robertson along with Lee Webb, and we're here for day 2 of the Republican Convention in San Diego, and it's been quite a party, hasn't it?
It really has. Pat, I think the big tent was erected last night on the floor of the convention center here in San Diego. Now, over the next 3 nights, we're going to see people fill that tent, I believe.
Remarkable.
May God bless him, and from both of us, God bless America.
While Nancy Reagan touched delegates' hearts, Colin Powell stirred them to their feet when he explained several reasons why he became a Republican instead of a Democrat. He received some boos and then cheers from the crowd when he expressed his support for abortion and affirmative action.
And I was invited here by my party to share my views with you because we are a big enough party and big enough people to disagree on individual issues and still work together for our common goal, restoring the American dream.
Many of the delegates liked what they heard from Powell.
Well, they all were great, but I think you couldn't beat Colin Powell and what he had to say.
Exceptional. I'd heard him speak before. Did a wonderful job.
Others weren't as pleased. This delegate is one of the youngest at the convention.
I think that he has a couple of positions that are a little bit offline from the typical Republican beliefs, our platform.
Still, it appeared Monday night, the first night of the convention, belonged to Ronald Reagan and Colin Powell. Colin Powell energized and brought excitement to this crowd at the convention center. They welcomed him into the Republican Party with open arms. Only problem is, Colin Powell isn't their candidate. Bob Dole is. The question now remains, will Bob Dole be able to do the same with his party and the nation? Gary Lane, CBN News, San Diego.
Republican videos project an image of youth and diversity.
I'm 19 years old.
Major goal, confront the idea that Republicans are intolerant.
My parents brought me to the United States when I was 14 years of age.
The video images differ from the reality on the convention floor. Our CNN Time poll shows 2 out of 3 delegates are male, and 9 out of 10 are white. Half are over 51, and nearly half make $75,000 a year or more. But it's not the reality here on the convention floor that matters. It's the image that comes through the TV screen to millions of viewers. So the question is prime time ready for the Republicans? CNN covers gavel to gavel, but ABC, CBS, and NBC covered only the last hour of opening night, so most viewers missed most of the videos. Even in the 60 minutes between 10 and 11 Eastern, much of what viewers saw was commercials, interviews, and anchor booth commentary. During the hour, CNN carried 57 minutes of GOP speeches and videos, ABC carried 34 minutes, CBS 36 minutes, NBC 40. But everybody stuck with Nancy Reagan's emotional address, and all carried Colin Powell's speech to the end. As a video windfall for Republicans, network cameras sought out faces of blacks, women, Hispanics, making the delegates look far more diverse than they really are.
Well, I was happy that they went to the diversity within the party.
So far, the video convention is projecting just the pretty picture the Republican managers hoped for. Brooks Jackson, CNN, at the Republican convention in San Diego.
And of course, my congressman is a Democrat.
That's great. Martha House, I'm on the floor. Star, Parker, ready to party. We're going back to the skybox.
All right, thanks very much, Star. We will be checking back in with you as the course of the evening wears on. We are back here in the skybox with Susie DeFrancis, Jennifer Dunn, and I'm Bruce Hamilton. We're going to talk a little bit more about women's issues. You know, here in the convention center, they have a Bob Dole Women's Health Issues Pavilion that is set up.
They also check for prostate and breast cancer. Did you know that? Yeah. And that was a request from Bob Dole. He asked them to set up that booth because he's very interested in trying to solve some of these problems. In the Congress, we've fought for money for breast cancer, prostate cancer, all those different areas where we need to be fighting to find answers. And he's a terrific guy. He's interested in all those causes, works hard for them all.
And today is the big day, Lee.
That's right, it is. And joining us is our guest analyst and commentator. She's the author and former Reagan Bush speechwriter extraordinaire, Peggy Noonan. Peggy, it's great to have you with us.
Peggy,
good morning.
We miss you as a speechwriter. You're now working for Time. I'm supposed to say that, and I know your insights are going to be extraordinary. But tell me right now, this is the day of the speech. Behind the scenes, and you've been here, what's happening with this speech? What's Bob Dole going to be doing today, in your opinion, to get ready for it?
All right. This is, as they're all saying, the speech of his life. What he ought to be doing today is relaxing. He ought to be, if ice cream cones are his favorite food, he should be eating ice cream cones, taking long baths, getting a little tan, combing his hair, and then taking a nap. He should be resting up for the speech. Then he should do one more rehearsal and go on and do it. Instead, in fact, in this past week, they have been furiously rewriting this speech, tearing it up, getting new writers in.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, Scott Reed passed the word about 2 weeks ago. The thing was completely written. Everything was great. And you're saying that they're not happy? That's, I hate to say it, it's vintage Bob Dole.
It is.
He always wants to take the package apart and redo it.
Yes, it is. Dole reverting to form, having said, well, this looks all right. He decides at the end, nah, maybe my cousin Herb ought to take a look at this. Herb, what do you think? And Herb says, take out the part about the flag. Well, and he'll go, you're right, let's take that out. I never liked that. So
you really mean that's happening?
That is everything I hear from about half a dozen people. And because speeches are magic, this still might turn out to be a great speech. But I must tell you, it does not have the earmarks so far of a success.
Peggy, that's nerve-wracking because you have to get your cadence, your phraseology, you have to underline and put pauses and all that thing to make a speech work.
You have to internalize it and own it by the time you give it. It must be yours. When George Bush gave his acceptance speech in 1988, he didn't have to look at the teleprompter. It was so inside him. He did whole long sections of the speech without barely looking at the script.
When he talked about expanding opportunities, rising incomes, sharing prosperity, this uplift, I think, is not Bob Dole's natural kind of idiom to speak in. And as you said, when he ended by saying, I'm the most optimistic man in America, I don't quite see that. Jack Kemp is the most optimistic man in America. That's why he's on the ticket, to supply that half of the message.
I think whether you like Bob Dole or dislike him, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, consider this. Consider this man's intent tonight. He has not had this large a primetime television audience since he gave the Republican Party's response to President Clinton's State of the Union address 8 months ago. Dole's purpose tonight was to fill in the blanks about himself, whether you agree with the content or not. And he had to say exactly what he stood for tonight.
He also drew contrast between himself and Bill Clinton time and again, and we're going to go research this after now and see just how typical it is for the nominee to name his opponent as many times as Bob Dole did. But time and again he talked about President Clinton this, the Clinton administration that. He referred indirectly to Hillary Clinton, to her book, It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. He even referred indirectly to Chelsea Clinton, their daughter, when he talked about the fact that she goes to a private school.
And the president's staff, he said a core of the elite who never grew up. No wonder he drew a very bitter response from George Stephanopoulos.
We have to have a little quiet. The chair would like to recognize the Reverend Franklin Graham for the benediction. Reverend Graham is the son of Billy Graham, and like his father,
conducts crusades around...
Welcome to the GOP TV Skybox. I'm Bruce Hamilton along with Susie DeFrancis, and we are joined by Representative Henry Bonilla from Texas. Good to have you here, sir.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here for this exciting night. Well, what a night it's been and what a week it's been for us.
Well, they call it the GOP, and it has certainly been a grand old party. You know, some of Bob Dole's advisors were quoted in the Washington Post this morning say that this speech could transform him from being a mere presidential candidate to being a potential president. Did he accomplish what he set out to do?
Absolutely. I thought he was focused, he was concise, he had a strong message, he was emotional at times, and he spoke from the heart, which I think was very important. He's touched on so many aspects that are important to the American people: the economy, crime, education, foreign policy, military, and was very specific. For example, I thought one of the highlights of his speech related to the economy, not just the tax cut, not just the tax credit for families, but the fact that he said, quote, his administration would work to end the IRS. That's something that resonates in every neighborhood in this country.
Simply a matter of numbers. And for Dr. Pat Robertson, founder of the Christian Coalition, America has a great future if people of faith will continue to step forward in numbers and take part in the election process.
And if we continue to work, and this organization continues to grow, and people in the grassroots continue to come out of their churches and out of their pews and into the polls and into the precincts and into the political process, we're going to see a time in America when once again it can be said, there is America. We give her to our children and our grandchildren, free, strong, proud, and truly one nation under God. God bless all of you. Thank you.
At the Republican National Convention, Richard Hunt, CBN News.
Well, here with us now is the director of the Christian Coalition, Ralph Reed. Ralph, there's been a lot of spotlight on the coalition this time and on the Christian conservatives. What do you think? What's your appraisal now, 4 days into the convention?
Well, you know, Pat, I think the two words that would describe what we've done here the last 2 weeks is mission accomplished. We came into this convention with two goals. Number one, to ensure that the party platform remained unapologetically and unreservedly pro-life. We did that last week. The second goal was to ensure that the ticket was pro-life. And when Bob Dole picked Jack Kemp, that closed it out. He has a 100% pro-life voting record. But more than that, Pat, because that in fact had been true at previous conventions as well. More than that, what you're seeing this week is an institutional maturation, a growing sophistication. We have one of the best whip systems on the floor. We have the most sophisticated communications computerized system on the floor to reach our delegates. We have more delegates than we've ever had before, and no matter what else is going on in the party, there's no question that as long as this movement continues to build and grow, I don't see anything in the future of the party except the pro-family, religious, conservative direction.
Seems that way.
It is demeaning that to the nation that within the Clinton administration, a core of the elite who never grew up, never did anything real, never sacrificed, never suffered, and never learned, should have the power to fund with your earnings their dubious and self-serving schemes.
All right, Trent, is that the line of attack against the Clinton administration?
That's a good line. I think it reflects what this administration has been doing. They are thinking the leaders. They do think the government can do it, should do it for the people. Bob Dole said he had faith in the American people, and he has lived that in his life. That's what he needs to talk about. That's how he needs to take this campaign out to the American people.
You know, I don't think there was too much Clinton bashing in there.
No, it wasn't too much.
George Stephanopoulos put out a statement. This was the most divisive partisan speech since Barry Goldwater in '64. It was not a partisan divisive speech, and I think you're a little too tough on him, Mark, in the sense that this was a guy who everybody says couldn't deliver speech. I have heard Bob Dole give some really bad speeches in my time, and this was a pretty good speech.
I'm going to let Mark respond to that, but I'm afraid I thought he was going to lose Bob Novak very early on when he said that honor was more important than wealth, Mark.
Hey, listen, I have to say, you know what's wrong with American education? You guys are easy graders. I mean, easy grading has gone rampant. This was not a C, it was not a B. It was a C minus at best. But let me just say, the one point at which Bill Sapphire attacked the speech was on the elitist line. He said it was divisive and class warfare. That's what Bill Sapphire says. I think that it was an attack, quite frankly, upon Dick Armey, Newt Gingrich, and Phil Graham, none of whom's ever worked in the private sector.
Republicans had their video walls. Democrats have theirs. They say they invented the idea. Republicans arranged video-friendly moments, like Bob Dole's arrival by boat. President Clinton is taking a page from Harry Truman's playbook, a train trip. Maybe this time with a satellite uplink on a hovering helicopter beaming pictures into the convention hall. Republicans had drama, suspense. Just kidding. Bill Clinton's coronation also may have to strain to hold viewers' interest. Democrats say they'll be different.
Now, let me be clear about some differences. It's going to be managed, but not scripted.
Not scripted? Let's get a second opinion.
I think there's a difference between a scripted convention and one that's well managed.
Glad to clear that up. Oh, there will be some differences. Where the Republican mini-series ran 15 hours, Democrats planned 26. Perhaps 125 speakers. Lots more to see, at least on cable. That sorry Republican balloon drop? The Democrats should be better. The ceiling's a lot higher in Chicago. And when it comes to diversity and openness, well...
They get on there for an hour every night and said, look at us, we're diverse, we're tolerant, we're inclusive. I said, hey, we're like that all the time.
But diversity has its limits, even at a Democratic convention.
Right now, we think that this is a very cohesive party. It's one that's been very unified behind this president and vice president.
Unified diversity. Yeah, that's the ticket. Next week, Hillary Clinton will speak. From the podium, not the floor, like Elizabeth Dole. Republicans reached for the political middle with Colin Powell and Susan Molinari. So will Democrats, with Evan Bayh, Indiana's tough-on-welfare governor, and gun control advocate Sarah Brady, wife of Ronald Reagan's former press secretary. Republicans redesigned their podium to look inviting. Democrats say they did that in '92 and will stick with the same look in Chicago. Republicans went around the liberal press and covered themselves on GOP TV. Democrats will get around the establishment press with their own news service, supplying sound bites, photos, and even custom-written news stories for any station or newspaper that will use them.
In a way, Bob Dole was overshadowed by events preceding his acceptance speech. Colin Powell's pro-life stance was one of the few notes of discord at the Republican convention. Susan Molinari's keynote address was viewed in the press as lackluster. Pat Robertson gave the impression, possibly true, that this was his convention in spirit, even though Christian conservatives were in absence at the podium. Can the 2000 political season bring about similar perceived unity? It could indeed actually be an event which once again makes hard, not manufactured, legitimate news.